Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Ahmaduhu wa asta'inuhu wa astadihi wa astaghfiruhu wa uminu bihi jalla wa ala wa la akturuhu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Have you seen this this right here? The U.S. has already started psychological warfare.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that yet.
Okay, that's from the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's just a headline. So today, that's the title of the subject. The title of the subject, of course, is psychological warfare. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is our subject today because that we're advocating for the Islamic Republic of Iran that they take charge of the, now this is psychological warfare. This is warfare declared by the United States of America against Iran. Okay, now, there's, in Iran's position, when we do our research, there's several types of warfare. One is psychological warfare, one is psychological guerrilla warfare, and other is asymmetric warfare. Asymmetric warfare, symmetric when the sides are not evenly balanced. When the sides are not evenly balanced, that means usually one is fighting a defensive war against the one that's the aggressor. In general history, in past times, in the colonial wars, the Europeans, for the last several hundred years, extracted a great cost from the colonial defenders. I mean, the defenders, whether in Africa and Asia. I mean, like, it's almost like on TV, hundreds and thousands, in some cases millions, died fighting the colonial powers. And the whole conquest of South Africa, that means Rhodesia all the way down to Cape Town, when the Europeans was fighting Montabile land, the people of Montabile land, the people had spears and they had cloth shields, you know, lion skin shields, fighting against Maxim guns, machine guns, and against repeating rifles. Commander Rhodes is said to have lost 8 white folks in that whole southern end struggle. And technically, hundreds of thousands of us died. We couldn't get close to the white man, just couldn't get close to him. We've studied the history of warfare in detail. Now, the white folks may look at us and think that that nigga don't know nothing about warfare. Well, one thing that's proved that we know more about warfare than any of the rest of them, because we're still here. Psychological guerrilla warfare, we've brought this United States government to a standstill. We're the ones controlling the environment here, not them. They can do what they want to us, but they can't make us do nothing. They can't make us respond. All those hassles that they have, so-called hassles, that they gave us, they was all blessings. We turned every last one of them into a blessing. And the proof of it is that the FBI wouldn't have been here a couple of weeks ago talking to me if what we wasn't saying wasn't real. They would pretend like you don't exist. We don't know nothing about you. Right? That's what they would have done. They would have been, oh no, we don't know nothing about you. We are. Everything that they have done in response to us has always been pretended accidentalism. But when you study, when you pick me up when I come from overseas, I'm over there for 5 hours, 4 hours, almost all the time. Okay? They going through everything. To us, that's no problem because we're prepared for it. Okay, now what we bring back with us, we bring back that stuff with us knowing that they're going to look through our stuff. So they're not setting us up, we're setting them up. They snatch our phone and run back there. One time it was real low. When I got the phone back, it was 74%, you know, like, remember I'm overseas and I'm not using the phone because it don't work. So when I get my phone back, they done plugged it in. That boy got 74% on, you know, he got 100%, 70%, 50%. In other words, it's been charging up all the time. They done downloaded everything on my phone. And that time, I made sure that they saw a picture of Ahmadinejad, the past president. We just smiled. He's not the president anymore. He's a past president. In other words, that, for us, is psychological guerrilla warfare. When we said that we're using a case study, that we're going to be historicizing this case, that we're going to be archivists, right? That we're going to chronicle everything that's happened. That is what's been going on over the last decades. We, therefore, without going into us, we have studied exactly what we're talking about. When we said that we're going to make the government agents expose themselves, that was years ago. And they all did, 1, 2, right on down the line. That's what they did, okay? That is what we were calling, what we still call psychological guerrilla warfare. Iran is right in the middle of this same type of thing. That's why they say, finally they're catching up. The U.S. been using it all the time, but they say psychological warfare. The U.S. has began psychological warfare. It hasn't began no psychological warfare. It's been doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, now, what did we have to do? We had to pick up on it. We studied we studied guerrilla warfare first, over a decade ago. And then we applied the psychological and the mental and the spiritual aspects to psychological warfare, and we called it psychological guerrilla warfare. Psychological guerrilla warfare is when you apply, what we're going to suggest now, that Iran, right now, today, and if it's any Iranians, which it is, you can see the name sometime, you got to call Iran and tell them to plug in on what you're listening to today. Because this is a life and death matter, and you'll see what I'm talking about as we go along. So, we're talking about Iran taking charge of this warfare. We're telling Iran that, number one, you should not allow them to control where you're coming from. You should not focus like they got Iran focusing on, they're going to cut off all our oil exports. Well, if they cut them off, forget it. Well, we'll get to what we're going to do. Let's see. So we're saying don't pay publicity, don't give public attention to the USA and what it's saying. Do not give public recognition. The speech that Rouhani made today or yesterday was very clear. They're hurting our such and such and such. Part of the speech was good, but you didn't see a design plan behind what he was saying. When Zarif came over here when you saw him on TV the other week, right? Mm-hmm. He was in New York. He was over here to talk to these people. That's what he was here. He was here to talk to them people, tell them, okay, now, what we're saying is to Zarif and those guys, we're saying directly to Zarif. What you do right now, you go to past President Ahmadinejad and tell him that we're ready to roll in unity and harmony, and I'll get together later on why. Okay, what we're saying to the Islamic Republic now is what we call design fitna. Design fitna, not for us, but for them. Because the Quran is clear, they will not cease fighting you until they can turn you back from your religion if they can. Right? So that means since the Islamic Republic has been here, they have never stopped fighting the Islamic Republic. Never. People think it goes back to the war, 1980 war with Saddam Hussein. No, it doesn't. It goes back to 1950. The first the CIA was formed in 1947. They had two cases in 53 and 54. The Arbenz government, which was a socialist government in South America. The Arbenz government. They used psychological warfare on him. He just was a socialist. He wanted to help the country become a better, you know, he wanted the people to eat their own bananas. That's all. Okay, so they didn't like that. They created radio stations and everything next to him, and they had him thinking that he was facing an invasion. And he crumbled. That's the Arbenz government in 1954. Before that, the Shah had been kicked out of Iran, right? In 1950. In 51 to 53, might have been 53, they brought him back. They brought the Shah of Iran back. And they caused all type of trouble for the Mossadegh government. The Mossadegh government was the Prime Minister Mossadegh. He nationalized Iranian oil. From the Seven Sisters, the big British people who was controlling Iranian oil, he nationalized it. They didn't like that, right? So they had people from the, they call them Zul-Khane, House of Power. I don't know if you ever seen those Iranian exercises. They use look like bowling pin balls, where they do all types of exercises to build up strength. It's a national, well, it used to be how Iranians trained, or Persians trained to fight. They use these big, look like bowling pins, you know, but they're heavy. The CIA organized people from those places, thugs basically, and pretty soon the Iranian government came down. When it came down, then they brought the Shah back. That's why in 1979, when the Shah came over here, right? You may not believe it, but when the Shah came over here, then they sent him to Panama. When they went, they sent him to Panama, our homeboy, what's the little pitted face guy that was selling dope for the U.S.? Noriega was taking care of the Shah down there. Omar Torres was the president, but the head of security was that guy. Now, why did they grab the embassy in the U.S.? Because in 1953, 25 years before, they had taken this situation over in Iran, and they thought that they were going to do the same thing. The Iranians was going by past history. Remember, the United States government always sets things up. Remember the Maine. when they wanted to take Cuba, when they wanted to take the Virgin Islands, when they wanted to take the Philippines, right? They just had the Maine blow up in Havana Harbor. 286 people are killed. They said, oh, we're going to go to war with the Spanish colony. Why? Because the Spanish was weak at that time, and the Spanish controlled all that region. So they took it from Spain. That's all. They took it from Spain. The Gulf of Tonkin resolution, anybody remember that stuff? That's the U.S. Well, 60, was it 64, 65, might have been 68. Whatever it is, they fired on themselves. And they got a Gulf of Tonkin resolution from the House of Representatives. Anyway, the world is used to the United States setting things up to do whatever they want to do. Here's what we're saying to this Iranian government. No rhetoric right now. You tell the world that we have looked at your history. You're supposed to be exchanging your aircraft carriers in that area. We suspect that you're coming over here to try to initiate, to try to set us up. They should say clearly, we are not going to do anything in the Strait of Hormuz. Not because we're weak, but because we're not letting you. And they, remember now, they're not only saying this in the news, but all their ambassadors are saying it to local newspapers in South Africa, right? All over the world, in France, wherever they are, every time one of their ambassadors, they got something in mind. They're gonna focus all their attention on the U.S. It's reverse psychological warfare. They're gonna reverse this. They're gonna re-encircle or encircle the United States government because the United States government has set itself up to be the big loser in psychological warfare, especially psychological guerrilla warfare. Everybody in the world knows that the U.S. is a bum and that all they came out of the treaty, right? They classified the Islamic Republican Guards, right, as a terrorist organization. They put Hezbollah on the list, but where's Israel on the list? Where's Saudi? Saudi Arabia is attacking Yemen, and they ain't not on no list. Saudi Arabia is bombing and killing the brothers, and they are not on any list at all. They're just not on no list, that's all. You know, they're doing whatever they want to do. All right, so this is what they have to make clear to the world. All the Iranian government has to focus on 3 or 4 points in their dialogue. Basically, that the United States wants, it's a return to old type of colonialism, resource colonialism. Look at Venezuela. What is Venezuela? Venezuela was doing good for the Latin countries. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, they had a book out called How Latin America Got Away from the U.S. and Prospered. I mean, the governments in South America, Brazil and all of them was doing good. What happened? The rebels in Colombia had snatched huge swaths of land. But the U.S. have 10 military bases. I thought it was 7, but it's 10 military bases in Colombia. So they helped the people get control of their government. The United States did. Get control of their area, and 2-3 years ago, the rebels has been there since 1964. Made a peace treaty with the government and joined the government. The United States government what I'm talking about now is the CIA. What does it do? The CIA is an arm of the U.S. government that sets up the global world as we see it, especially the past colonial power, colonized powers or people. Number one, to steal all their resources. But now they're just doing it in the open. It's clear why the United States is sanctioning the use sanctions. The UN today is weaker than the League of Nations used to be. Weaker than the League of Nations. And the League of Nations is the reason Hitler came to power. They wouldn't challenge him. Neville Chamberlain came back in '38 from talking with Hitler, saying, I just talked with Hitler and he promises peace in our time. I don't know if y'all remember that. Peace in our time. Whenever they talk about appeasement, they talk about Neville Chamberlain. What we're telling the Islamic Republic is avoid this peacenikism, but in a different way. This is nonviolent resistance. Nonviolent resistance. Iran should declare today or tomorrow, as soon as they hear this, that number one, we're not closing the Strait of Hormuz. We're not closing it. We're not giving you any pretext. We're not giving you nothing to attack us. Why? You ought to see Iran. Iran, man, has 20 and 30-story apartment buildings. Oh, look, the place, Tehran, is over 15 million people. You wouldn't believe it. After the war, Iran was 10 or 12 million people. Iran fought that war in '88. It is a totally different system, society, not system from those days. Okay, there's no caller ID. That could be a friend or a foe. But whatever it is, we ain't having these dummies. You know, if that's the dummies calling, you can call right after I finish. Okay. See, well, no, what they don't like, tell the truth. Just imagine. Here it is, the Negro telling Iran what to do. And it's not new. It's not new. You gotta, everybody around know that this is not new. This has been going on. But back to this colonialism.